Have you ever heard of a house that never sleeps? A house that, once you enter, you can never close your eyes again. This isn't just some campfire tale or a story whispered between children in the dark. This is a story about a young man named Marwan, and it might just be the reason you leave the lights on tonight. So settle in, get comfortable, and prepare yourself, because what you are about to hear might just haunt you. Our story begins on the quiet, windswept outskirts of a small, forgotten town. There, silhouetted against the grey sky, stood an old, abandoned house. It hadn't seen a living soul in over 50 years. The windows were like vacant, shattered eyes. The walls were crumbling like old bones, and a palpable sense of dread clung to the air around it. Locals would cross the street to avoid walking past it, even in the bright light of day. They said the house was cursed, a place where shadows moved on their own and whispers echoed in empty rooms. They spoke of it in hushed tones, warning their children to never ever go near it. But in this town lived Marwan. Marwan was young, full of life, and possessed a spirit that thrived on challenges. He wasn't one for superstition. He saw the townsfolk's fear as nothing more than a collection of silly myths, ghost stories passed down through generations to scare the gullible. He was determined to be the one to finally debunk the legend of the house that never sleeps. He announced to his friends with a confident smile that he would spend a night in the abandoned house and emerge the next morning to prove to everyone that it was just a pile of rotting wood and bricks. One evening, as the sun began to bleed across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Marwan made his way to the dreaded property. The air grew colder the closer he got. He stood before the imposing structure, its decaying facade looking even more sinister in the fading light. Taking a deep breath, he placed his hand on the massive, creaky wooden door. He gave it a push. A long, eerie screech echoed through the twilight, a sound so guttural it was as if the house itself was groaning in protest after decades of silence. He stepped over the threshold into the darkness within, and in that instant, with a deafening boom that shook the very foundation, the door slammed shut behind him. He hadn't touched it. The wind hadn't moved it. It was as if an unseen hand had sealed him inside. The air inside was thick and heavy, pressing in on him. He coughed, the smell hitting him like a physical blow-afoul, revolting mixture of dampness, decay, and something else, something metallic and vaguely sweet that he couldn't quite identify. It was the smell of a place that had been left to die. Using the flashlight on his phone to cut through the oppressive darkness, Marwan began to explore. He walked down long dust-choked hallways. The wallpaper was peeling off in long curling strips, revealing dark stained plaster beneath. Cobwebs, thick as cotton, draped from the ceilings like ghostly decorations. But it was the mirrors that he found most unsettling. In every room, every single mirror was covered with a thick black cloth. It was a deliberate act. Someone had gone to great lengths to hide the reflections in this house, all of them except one. At the end of a long corridor, he found a large ornate mirror, its frame carved with strange, unsettling figures. This one was uncovered. Hesitantly, Marwan approached it, his own reflection slowly emerging from the gloom. But as he got closer, his blood ran cold. The man staring back at him was not quite him. The reflection's eyes were pitch black, bottomless voids devoid of any light or humanity, and its face was twisted into a wide, malevolent smile, a grin of pure evil that he had never and could never make. He stood there, paralyzed, as his horrifying twin slowly, deliberately raised its hand. It didn't wave. It didn't mimic him. It pointed a single, long finger towards a dark staircase that descended into the unseen depths of the basement. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to find a way out. But a morbid curiosity, the same force that had brought him here, now pulled him towards the stairs. He felt like a puppet on a string. He descended cautiously, each step on the old wooden stairs groaning under his weight. But the echoes were strange. They didn't sound like footsteps. They sounded like whispers, twisting his name in the darkness. Marwan. At the bottom of the stairs, he found a large, stone-walled room. It was illuminated not by electricity, but by the flickering glow of dozens of candles. They were arranged on the floor in a perfect, unbroken circle. The air here was even colder, and the strange, metallic smell was stronger. In the absolute center of the circle stood an old, weathered wooden chair, and sitting on that chair, as if waiting for him, was a book. It was an ancient-looking tome, bound in dark leather that was stained and caked with what looked unmistakably like dried blood. He felt an irresistible pull towards it. He took a step into the circle of candles, the flames dancing and casting his shadow in a wild, distorted dance on the walls. As he reached out, his fingers trembling, just inches away from touching the gruesome book, a pale, skeletal hand shot out from the shadows beneath the chair. It clamped around his wrist with impossible strength, its grip like ice. He froze, his heart hammering against his ribs. And then a whisper slithered into his ear from right behind him, so close he could feel a cold breath on his neck. "You are not the first." The voice rasped, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "But you will be the last." A primal scream tore from Marwan's throat. He ripped his arm free and scrambled backward, his mind consumed by pure terror. He turned and fled, bolting up the basement stairs, his only thought to get to the front door. He burst back into the main hallway, fumbled with the heavy iron handle, and wrenched the door open. He stumbled through, but to his horror, he wasn't outside. He was back in the same room he had just left, the circle of candles still flickering, the blood-soaked book still resting on the chair. Panic set in. He ran to the windows, one by one, smashing the grimy glass with his fists. He climbed through, expecting to feel the cool night air on his face, but instead he fell back onto the dusty floorboards of the same room. Every exit, every door, every window was a loop, a trap. They all led back to the basement. It was as if the house itself was alive, a monstrous entity playing a cruel game, swallowing him whole. He was a prisoner in a maze with no escape. He could hear the voice again, no longer a whisper. It was closer now, louder, echoing from all around him, seeming to emanate from the very walls of the house. The house never sleeps. It boomed, the sound vibrating through his bones. And now, neither will you. In that final, terrifying moment, as the voice reached its crescendo, every single candle in the room was extinguished at once. An absolute, oppressive silence fell, and the darkness became total. No one has seen Marwan since that night. The house still stands on the edge of town, silent and waiting. The locals say that sometimes, on the quietest nights, if you listen very carefully, you can hear a faint screaming coming from within its walls. The house is still there, waiting for its next curious visitor. So let this be a warning. If you ever find yourself passing by an old abandoned house, a place that calls to the adventurer in you, do not enter. No matter how brave you think you are, no matter how much you want to prove the story's wrong, remember that. Because some doors, once they are opened, can never truly be closed again. Thank you for watching. If this story sent a chill down your spine, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't go exploring any abandoned houses.